Thank you for joining us. Columbian's Editorial Board is pleased to welcome candidates for 18th Legislative District Representative, Position 2. One, I apologize. That's what I thought, but I wrote it down wrong. Position 1. I am Greg Jane. I'm the editorial page editor, and I'll let the other editorial board members introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Colleen Keller. I'm the assistant news editor of the Columbian and a member of the editorial board.
Corey?
I'm Craig Brown. I'm the editor of the Columbian and Columbian.com and a member of the editorial board.
I'm Ben Campbell. I'm publisher and co-owner of the Columbian and a member of the editorial board.
And as mentioned, we are recording this. We will post it unedited on our website and our YouTube channel. And with that, we'll move on to the candidates. Why don't you take just 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourselves, explain why you are running for this position, and then we'll move on to specific policy questions. So we'll start with Deken.
Great. Appreciate the opportunity. Deken Letinich, running in the 18th because I've spent the last 10 years fighting for working families as an organizer for the laborers union. In that experience, I was able to move into a role where I would advocate for my members in Olympia. And over the last couple of years, I had the opportunity to work on some priority legislation that we ran. 2 years ago, it was 5272, which was our our speed zone cameras and work zones. Our members kept getting killed on the job on our highways and freeways. And so when state troopers are not available at the start of a work zone, we now have the opportunity to put up a photo radar system to change driver behavior and hopefully protect our hardworking men and women on the Washington's roads. And then last year it was 2266, our safe and sanitary protections bill. This afforded women returning to work that had a need to pump and store breast milk a clean, lockable space to do so, and basic feminine hygiene products and first aid kits. Both of those bills we started in a bipartisan way, reaching across the aisle with Senator King in regards to the speed zone cameras, and collaborating with the other side of the aisle saw that we could come to effective solutions for working families in Washington. And so we were able to nearly unanimously pass both of those bills. And I was really proud of that work and seeing that when you have the mindset of working together for working families in the state of Washington, you can get things done quickly and effectively. And so that was kind of the final push for me to get more involved and decide to throw my name into the ballot, as they say, and see if we can't start making changes for working families in the 18th.
Great, thank you. Stephanie?
Yes, Stephanie McClintock. I am your current state representative in Position 1. I serve as assistant ranking on capital budget, consumer protection and business. I'm a former small business owner. I also serve as a member on the education committee. I'm a former battleground school board member. So education is really important to me. I also work in public affairs for United Grain Corporation right here in Vancouver. Our facility is at the Port of Vancouver and our corporate office is here in the Riverview Tower. So I have a nice little walk over here. So I'm very lucky to work for a great company that allows me the opportunity to serve in the legislature. I think it's really important to have public sector representation in Olympia. There's not a lot of that, so I can represent business industry and kind of the trials and tribulations that come with that from the business perspective. I also very passionate about education since being on the school board, member of High School Boosters the whole 6 years that my sons were at Prairie High School. Go Falcons. And I loved that, enjoyed that. I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years. Family and things, my kids were very important. So I was very engaged with the kids and I miss it. I worked in human resources for about 10 years before that. So I have some, experience with that. And that probably leads to just, I think I'm a good communicator and good with people and, working with others. Education bills are a couple of things that are of interest to me for this next legislative session. I had 2 bills that didn't make it all the way through that I'm going to be reintroducing. So I don't know if there's a question on education. I can expand on it at a later time, but I don't want to take too much time on the intro. So that's just a little bit of me.
Great, thank you, and thanks again, both of you, for joining us. I want to start with one of the major issues, both this year and in coming years, facing the legislature is housing and homelessness. Has the legislature done enough? What avenues would you recommend moving forward? And we'll start with Deken.
Great. Housing and homelessness comes up consistently on the doors and every panel that we're at. So it clearly is front of mind for the people of the 18th and in Washington State in general. I mean, all we hear about is our housing shortages and how do we address those? And I think one way we can look at it is density. I think that we've had the luxury of living out west and having this abundance of space and land for so long that the idea of multifamily housing is almost disparaged. But I think as you look at other metropolitan areas across the country, they've relied on duplexes, triplexes, condos, apartments, more multifamily dwellings, different zoning opportunities. We've seen a little of it with the renovation in downtown Vancouver of 1/4s, 1/6s, where it's retail on the bottom floor and living above it. And I think that makes a lot of sense as we look at how we can both facilitate business and housing. And I think those single building, maybe multi-income level homes where it's there are affordable housing units mixed in with standard housing units are ideal. I think you can often incorporate those without singling out the low-income housing and making that a detriment or a mark of shame somehow to be like in low-income housing. So when you integrate that with regular housing and other opportunities in the area, I think somewhere we have a large path forward. In regard to homelessness, the simple answer is there isn't an answer, but I do really like what I've seen the city of Vancouver doing with their safe stay communities. To hear Mayor Ann's reports about families and people that are able to go into those pallet homes and those safe stay communities and start to establish, a residency, start to get clean if that's one of their hurdles, starting to apply for work, and maybe even something as simple as assistance with an ID card or a driver's license. These are barriers to employment that a lot of people don't think of when I think the very bland mindset can be, well, why don't you just get a job? I don't understand. Well, there sometimes are a lot of barriers to employment. And so I think when we put options in place for people that are willing and trying to change their situation, we see the success rates. And it's just last week, the mayor presented a sheet for all 3 communities where there were upwards of 4 to 6 in the last month that had made the next step in that housing process. And so if we're able to look at something like that in the legislature, I think it's a good start. We have to be willing to explore a lot of options, though. I don't think that necessarily will be the solution, but it's, I think, one of the better ones we've seen so far. So why not start there and see how we can improve it, if anyway.
From the state perspective, would you be looking to promote safe stay communities in other cities, or should it be up to the individual cities? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I know that locally it's been a more city independent issue. And I would encourage other cities to do that. But if there's a way through the legislature to support or help facilitate that, I think we should look into it. It's a program that has shown quantifiable results in a positive manner. So to build on that until we can come up with something better or improve what is already there, I think is the best route.
Thank you. Stephanie, your thoughts?
On homelessness and housing?
Yeah.
So make sure.
Sure.
Well, I think none of us know the magic answer. There's no one magic answer. I think there's a lot of reasons why we have our homelessness. I think we have a mental health crisis, and ways that the legislature is addressing mental health is we've got a 48-bed facility being built right by WSUV off of 50th there, and so that is well on its way under construction. I think that's going to help. We had Daybreak or youth substance and mental health services that closed abruptly in May of 2023, and that was remedied through capital budget. So we've got Madrona recovery coming in, so we were able to secure $16.2 million to get that facility up and running. And I know that there were some hiccups with some permitting, it just maybe a couple months ago, but I think it's well on its way to being open by the end of the year, which I think is really important for this area, Southwest Washington. I think there's only 2 in the state facilities like that help with youth services. And I know that that was a big hit to a lot of families when that closed abruptly, trying to find a place for those kids. So I was kind of involved in that, trying to see if we could keep it open, and it didn't work out. So we've got, I worked on capital budget with our assistant chair on capital budget on that, because that was something, she's on the healthcare committee and being in the 18th district. So I was able to work with her on that. I think we've got a drug crisis. I think we've got, I'm the daughter of a narcotics detective. So I was always taught that, you know, an egg in a frying pan, that's your brain on drugs, from the 80s. And so that was the message back then. There was, you know, the war on drugs, that messaging, and a national campaign that was, you know, advertised on TV about teaching kids and everyone the dangers of drugs and what they do to your mind and your body. And I don't see that these days. And I think our kids need to get a message that drugs are dangerous. I know marijuana is legal and that's fine, but I think we need to educate our young people on how that affects your mind and your body. So, you know, there's just a couple things, you know, mental health, drug crisis, and then law enforcement. I mean, we have the lowest per capita law enforcement. You know, Clark County Sheriff's Office is understaffed. They're making strides. I speak with John Horsch on a regular basis. The law enforcement facility that opened in May, that was, you know, a joint effort of the entire delegation in Southwest Washington, just kind of beating on the door of our governor of we need to do this. So that was a really big deal, because that opened right away. I mean, there was really no delay. We were able to come into an old school building, I think over in Evergreen School District. I think that's where that is. I did get to go to the grand opening of that and went to the first graduating class of officers that came out of that facility. So I think I'm hopeful that we will see results of these mix of different things happening in our county and the 18th district. I know when I knock on doors that's one of the issues, homelessness, drugs, and along with, you know, crime, public safety, and just feeling safe in our community again, on top of affordability and education. So.
Now, in addition to that, in the social aspect of it, does the legislature need to do more to promote housing construction? Well,
there were some bills that were brought up by the majority last session. We talked about some housing, as in like kind of just those housing projects in those urban areas. That did not make it all the way through. It still needs some more work. I actually met with the representative on that, just one-on-one to talk about pros and cons on that. She was hoping to get, you know, bipartisan support, and that'll probably come back up again, and we'll talk about it. But I think good bills take time, and fleshing out the pros and cons, unintended consequences. And so there's a few bills that will be returned. I think that will be better, and we might have some solutions that'll help. I know in the 18th, right around where I live, we've got a lot of the cottage homes. So the kind of single car garage, you know, 2-story homes, and I think that's a great option to these big homes that are being built. So I see things improving. I see all of those homes get snatched up pretty quick, and they're continuing to build another project along 119th between 50th and 72nd. So again, it's just another option to help with housing, and to I think supporting those nonprofits that we have locally, Share, Salvation Army. I know that they are focused on helping people stay in their apartments. they want to make sure if they need rental assistance, you can come to them. They have grant money from the state. And it's easier and cheaper to help someone before they fall into homelessness with their rent, because once they fall out of that home, to come up with 2 months rent and deposit, then that they're really can't afford it. So I just know of those things because those are a couple organizations the company I work for supports, and I'm always at those different galas and events. So I think I talk to people at the doors about those different options.
Great, thank you. Colin?
Well, Stephanie, in your opening comments, you mentioned education.
Yeah.
And so I would like to hear about the bills that you are hoping to advance in the next session and give Deken a chance to comment on those. And then in addition, is it time, does Washington need a new funding formula for public education? It's been something that we've been hearing a lot during the course of this election season. So why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, well, I will address your second part of your question first. I would say yes. I'm actually on a subcommittee. We're calling it SCAPR, School Construction Assistant Program, revised. That's another project that I'm working with the Assistant Chair of Capital Budget on. She's a former school board member as well, so we both share this passion. The funding formula for school construction doesn't even meet half the cost. It hasn't been raised in decades. So we did move the needle a little bit this last session and got an increase on that, but it does not cover the cost of renovation or building a new school. I did write a bill, and I knew it was a long shot, but it was really based around Battleground School District and the struggles. I know those struggles the best. We've got schools that are 50 plus years old, and they cannot pass a bond. They haven't passed a bond in over 20 years. And so the bill was 75% state match. If you've got buildings over 50 years old, you've tried to pass a bond, so at least you've made the effort, and the community rejects that. And so then you would apply, then you would be eligible for more funds. So because school districts like Battleground, there's not much in the budget. I've worked on that budget. It's, beans and rice is kind of what I call the shoestring that Battleground School District runs on. There's no real businesses to speak of that we can pull, taxes from, like Evergreen and Vancouver have. It's a lot of rural communities and people on fixed incomes that just don't support those bonds. So there's where the inequities come from, I think, in funding school districts or schools. Is we've got Vancouver's got quite a bit of money. You go to Skyview High School, and I sit in the auditorium and to watch the Vancouver Symphony play there, and it's a beautiful auditorium. And then I'm at Prairie High School, and I'm in seats that are, I know they've remodeled them once, but there's no padding left. And sitting through an entire play, I always talked about Battleground School District is the outside does not reflect the inside. My kids got a great education, and our outside looks a little rough, but there's good stuff that goes on in there. To speak on the bills that I'm looking at reintroducing, one of them is putting limits on cell phone use in schools. That did get some attention and traction over the summer. Parent Magazine in Seattle picked that up and is supporting me in that. I've got Senator Lovick that's interested in running companion bill on that. So we spoke at the Law Enforcement Academy. He was down in Vancouver for that. And so really it's just, we need to put the phones away. We've got studies across the state. There's already school districts in Washington that are doing this. So my bill is just requiring each school district to adopt rules around cell phone use. Our superintendent of public instruction has come out with a press release just maybe a month ago stating that he is encouraging each school to adopt. My bill would require instead of encourage. Mental health stats, the mental health of students is better when we are not using our cell phones all day. And, of course, there's carve outs for, I know there's kids that are diabetic, that monitor their insulin on their phones. So they can still have them, but they just can't have them out. And we need to put them away. And I think as adults, we also need to start leading by example. And we all have our phones away, almost. Now, so we can focus and pay attention and not be distracted. And I think our test scores will go up. That has been proven in some different school districts across the state. And right now, when our test scores are 50% passing English language arts, 40% passing math, I think that is putting our cell phones away is a really cheap way to improve test scores and reduce mental illness.
A lot of people complain when the state makes mandates for schools saying it should be up to the local district. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I am a local control kind of person. It certainly was my perspective when I was on the school board. And I have talked to a couple superintendents, especially mine in Battleground, and he said, we need a statewide mandate on this because the pushback from parents, they want to be able to say, hey, the state is requiring us to adopt rules around cell phone use. And, back when we were in school, I don't know about you, but if my mom wanted to get a hold of me, she'd call the front office and a note would be run to my classroom. And then there's always a phone to the teacher in the classroom if you need a student right away. I think kind of maybe backtracking a little bit on this cell phone stuff would be really helpful for our kids to kind of learn some old school ways.
Okay, Deken, what did you address?
Did you want to touch on the second bill?
Thank you. My other bill is a what I call an exit survey bill. So parents that are pulling their kids out of schools, let's just find out why they're pulling their kids out. I do this in the private sector when we've got an employee that leaves, then we find out why. We want to retain employees. It's costly to do a search, interview, and onboard new employees. So that's just a tactic we use in the private sector. So I thought, why don't we find out from these parents why they're pulling their kids out of schools and address those issues? We've got a lot of the finances or the money is not going to the school if the kid's not enrolled or going to school there. So what better way to address the issues and get those kids back? Because we do have a great public education system here in this state. And I think if we find out the whys and address them, parents and kids are the customers of our schools. So let's find out what they need and get them back into the schools.
Okay. All right, now, Deken.
Thank you.
So if you want to talk about these issues that Stephanie brought up about school funding, is it time for a new formula, a new approach, and perhaps maybe touched on her bills about cell phones and exit survey.
I think one thing we should immediately be looking at is a simple majority for passing our bonds and levies. I think that's something that is widely supported. I think you've seen Ridgefield School District just last year narrowly missed the 60% threshold, and they're in a situation where that new school they just opened was immediately at capacity, and the need for a second school was immediately there the second the first one opened. And so lowering it to a simple majority, I think, opens up a lot of opportunities for funding. And even if it's a matter of compromising and going to 55%, the Republicans threw that out there, and even that I would support as a Alamo type effort. We'd rather see a simple majority. I think the people in the state would also like to see that, and so that's something I'd be happy to start pushing day one, right? Like, no excuses needed. If we feel like that is going to solve some of our issues, let's start working towards it now. The cell phone limits, it makes sense. I'd like to see the language again in its second iteration, but I think generally speaking, that's a positive idea. And what harm could it do to have our kids more focused? I know that there will likely be some questions about accessing your students during the daytime or call outs or scheduling pickups. I think we've all become a little dependent on the convenience of cell phones, and I was happy to hear you touch on the issue of monitoring for type 1 diabetics and type 2 diabetics, as my nephew is going through that at Prairie High School, no less. And then truthfully, I was curious, I thought, and I guess well, no, I won't. Sorry, that's rude. I was gonna ask you a question, but that's not what we're doing. So I'll take a small pivot. Lowering the bond and levy threshold to a simple majority is a big one. I would, having a chance to actually look at the language, likely support a cell phone limit bill if that was coming. And then the exit survey in a lot of ways makes sense. If we are seeing our kids leaving for private opportunities, homeschool, Riverlink, other opportunities, let's find out why. Was it because of class sizes? Was it because of auditorium seats? So to find that answer out, it could be helpful. And so I'll give you the credit for that. But let's look at it and see how we can improve. As far as the formula, when we're not fully funding public education, I think we're only hurting the people in our state. When Vancouver and Evergreen schools are laying off teachers at close to 100 per district this current school year, we've done something wrong. We rely on our teachers for a lot, and we rely on our schools for a lot. When school isn't in session, where do you have community basketball practices at the school? Where do you, meet if there's a natural emergency? Half the schools say designated storm shelter, right? We count on our schools as a community for so much more than just schooling. And I think that, at least in Vancouver schools, I know that they're still providing meals for kids, which I think is a major benefit and a pretty minimal line item when we look at the overall benefit to having kids who know that they have food stability and they're not going to spend their day hungry, and who willingly go to school in the summer to pick up those free lunches because they're dependent on that to eat. So if you're looking for a well-written plan on how to specifically fund the schools, I apologize. I don't have that, but I'm happy to get involved with that because I fully believe in our public schools. And I think we owe it to the kids and the people of Washington State to fully fund them. No excuses.
Real quick, Stephanie, would you support a bill lowering the threshold for bond elections?
I am not sure.
Okay. It's a straight answer. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I am not sure. I need to see it, and Battleground is a little different situation and constituency. And so I have to make sure that I do my due diligence and represent the 18th district, not particularly what I would agree with.
Sure. Listening to both of the talk and looking at the campaign materials, I see two candidates that are thoughtful and informed, not likely to call each other a bunch of nasty names, and to see the value of working across the aisle. So how are you different from your opponent? Deken, you want to start?
Sure. The difference for me starts from, 25, 30 years ago. I went to a community college for a little while and then went into residential building, and eventually was lucky enough to find my way into a union apprenticeship where I learned a trade that I can work anywhere in the United States and Canada. And it's provided for me in some way my entire life. I'm a fourth generation laborer. I've had the benefit of, more often than not, having food on my table and clothes on my back, and knowing that I had a job that I could provide for my family for, and rolling that into my experience as an organizer and just constantly working for working families. That's what I've done. That's what I want to continue to do. When you look at the 18th, there are a lot of blue-collar families in the 18th. Residential construction is big. Infrastructure work is big. Development is big. There are a lot of people that shower after work in the 18th. And I'm proud to have done that. And I'm proud to have transitioned into a role of an organizer and assistant political and legislative director for my union, where I had the chance to advocate for people in a different way in Olympia. When we look at how we're running legislation and what we prioritize, it's about the people that do the work every day. And so as a former CTE president for the CTE program at Hudson's Bay High School, as the 2018 union member of the year, these are things that I've seen steer me towards working for working families. And that's something I'll prioritize day one and hit the ground running. I've seen that, I mean, I heard Stephanie's comment of good legislation does take time, but I think that I've proven 2 years in a row that when you start off working together with both parties for the good of the people, it doesn't have to take time. You can do it quickly and effectively without excuses. And so I think that's where we can safely say we differ. I know that I'm 100% pro-choice. I don't know if that's a difference, but I got no problem saying it. And I know that I want to absolutely 100% make sure that bridge gets built across the I-5 bridge, and then be happy to start looking at other options once we've committed to that. We put too much time, too much money into a very old bridge that I don't need to recite to you guys. I'm sure you've heard it from every candidate and the mayor and the IBR like I have. That,
Oh, we've been stuck on it before.
yeah, right. So I think everybody in this room and probably everybody that will take the time to watch this is aware of what the I-5 bridge has going, and I want to do everything in my power to be an ally and an asset to move that forward. Yeah, I think that is the differences in a nutshell. Sorry, got a little.
What do you think?
What do I think? Well, I think our biggest difference is the letters next to our name. I have an R and Deken has a D. And when we are looking at our House of Representatives, there are 58 Democrats and there are 40 Republicans. And who knows what November 5th will look like. So Democrats are one seat away from a supermajority. That means leaving Republicans out of many conversations, most importantly, fiscal committees. So that I don't think that is a positive move. I think that we need balance in Olympia of ideas. It would be completely one-party rule for this state. I mean, it already leans that way, obviously. And we spend our time mostly just making amendments on Democrat bills. That's what a lot of my time was spent on. And that was not something that I, had anticipated. I made a couple amendments on tolling, on a bill that was about tolling. So I think that's the biggest difference here is we're looking at a supermajority in the House if we don't make sure that there are 40 Republicans, at least 40 Republicans there. And bridge issue, I support a new bridge. I think we need another lane on there. And trying to think, was there another part to your question on biggest difference or just the biggest difference?
Where you're different.
Okay, well, that is the biggest difference.
I want to follow up a couple of things. And Deken mentioned that he's pro-choice.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on abortion?
Well, personally, I'm pro-life, but I don't expect anyone else to believe what I believe. I can have my own personal feelings. Abortion is protected in this state from initiative back in the early 90s. I would not ever look to overturn an initiative that is driven by the people of this state. That's what they want. I have my own reasons for being pro-life. My brother is adopted from a 17-year-old mother, and we're very thankful that we were able to adopt him. And I have a brother that died of sudden infant death syndrome. So I have a little different view on that, but I think all women have the right to choose.
If somehow the issue did come up in the legislature, if somebody proposed a bill to ban abortion, would you support that?
No.
And then Deken, follow up on speaking of your history in labor. Do you think that labor unions are underrepresented in Olympia?
Yes. I mean, for a long time, labor was lucky enough to have a champion in the Senate, and Karen Kaiser, who is stepping away. And then there is a brick mason out of Spokane, Rep. Ormsby, but that's about the extent of it, unless you include teachers. Sorry, I was thinking mostly of building trades labor, but so there is union representation in Olympia, but not enough, in my opinion. I think historically, union members have fought for workers, and fighting for workers, regardless of open shop or union, is something that most legislation benefits. And so that's why I'm running. I want to represent people that work for a living every day.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
So what role do you feel like state government should have in fostering job creation and supporting local businesses? Steph, do you want to start?
Fostering, say that again,
Fostering job creation?
fostering job creation. Well, I think there's certainly things that can be done to foster job creation. My first term in 2022, I worked on a bill that, streamlining the process of professional licensing. I was getting complaints from people just trying to get their professional license in a timely manner. DOL needs new systems put in place, new website, things like that, to navigate that, easier. And I think, investment in, improving our technologies to get people back to work, is a simple thing that we can do. I also will be reintroducing a bill for 16 and 17-year-olds who are enrolled in a CTE program. Right now, they are only allowed to work 4 hours a week with following LNI, and trying to get that switch to match with Running Start students. Running Start students can work 40+ hours a week. I don't think the plus is needed, but that's what the law is. I think it's like 48 for some reason for Running Start kids. But allowing those kids that are in CTE, enrolled in CTE programs, to be able to actually work more than the 4 hours that the law says now. Still working on perfecting that bill, having ongoing discussions through this interim on that. I'm a big promoter of CTE. My son's a welder. He learned to weld at Prairie High School, took it for 3 years, found his passion, and man, did it make my job as a mom easier, because he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Went to Mount Hood Community College and got his welding certs. And after talking with Deken in my office about union jobs and what that's like, he got onto the pipe fitters union. So I think that we need to encourage kids to go into the trades. It's needed. Not every kid can afford 4-year college, nor is that their cup of tea. I know my son could not sit still in class. He needed to be busy. He's a hands-on kid. And as a mom, I knew that. So I kind of grabbed it. I'm like, hey, why don't you try this class over here? So that's kind of, how he fell into that. But so job creation in those two senses, I think, is a good first step, a step forward. And then the other part of your question?
Local business support.
Well, so that bill is actually brought to me by a couple businesses in the 18th district. So those businesses are wanting to work with those students more. They've got programs that will help them learn those trades, and that was driven by them. They approached me, and we're kind of doing a roundtable discussion of all stakeholders to kind of flesh out some things that the ranking member on that committee, on the labor committee, didn't like about it. And so we're working on it now. So hopefully we'll get those kids in those CT programs some work experience, which is what they really want to do. They don't want to be in a class. They want to be actually out there working.
Deken?
Yeah, can I touch on a couple things that Stephanie said? Is that all right?
Please.
Number one, I'm super sorry this almost feels mean, but that bill that you're talking about reintroducing that allows more hours for 16 and 17-year-olds, I know that you had introduced it last year, and I feel like it abruptly came to a halt because a 16-year-old became a double amputee working unsupervised on a job through a CTE program. And you can read about it in the Columbian. And I think that's a big reason. And there's a reason why we don't have minors working unsupervised on construction sites. The point that you made of equality with Running Start and 40 hours, I mean, I think that's only the case if you're over 18. I think child labor laws still exist that limit your work availability to 20 hours if you're currently enrolled in school. So just so you're aware there. But yeah, there would have to be a lot of changes to the 16 and 17-year-olds work hours and accessibility in CTE programs before I think you would see any kind of support. It's terribly unfortunate, and I feel bad even bringing it up as like a talking point in this situation, because there is a kid that will probably never walk again, you know, or if he does, he's gonna be on artificial legs because he went to work and was put in a dangerous situation for the sake of the contractor's benefit. That same contractor has numerous violations for overworking kids on job sites, not providing lunch breaks. And so, sorry, as an organizer, as a guy that fights for workers all the time, I get worked up when I hear about things like that. Like those are abuses. And I'm not saying that you're advocating for those in any way, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that these are things that we have to be mindful of when we're writing legislation, when we're working towards solutions for working people. And again, sorry if the tone got aggressive. To your original question about the role of job creation and supporting small businesses, it sounds like a layup, but one of the easiest ways to create jobs is to fund infrastructure. Those are prevailing wage projects that often provide local workforce arrangements with prevailing wage rates, which means whatever the highest rate in that area is, no matter union or open shop, out of Oregon, out of Idaho, it doesn't matter, you're paying the prevailed rate for that local area's work. And economic studies have consistently shown that when you put cash into the hands of working class people, it is the fastest way to spread that money throughout the economy. So absolutely, when we look at IBR money, when we look at the I-5 bridge replacement, when we look at the Hood River bridge replacement, when we start talking about even something as simple as basic road maintenance, overlays, and paving, those are all job creators. Those are good family wage jobs, and that spreads throughout the community. And as far as supporting small business, yeah, any opportunity we can do to lighten the burdens of governance, to make it easier for somebody to start a small business, let's look into that. Like, let's support people that want to take that risk, but we have to be mindful that we're not deregulating things to a point of creating this new Wild West situation where, you know, suddenly we're allowing 12-year-olds to be, you know, mudding in sewer tiebacks. And, you know, I mean, I know that's extreme, but if you give certain people an inch, they'll take a mile. And that's where I think we see the need for government to step in and kind of have this oversight to keep honest people honest and catch bad actors. Okay.
Can I speak to
Yeah.
Deken's comment? Yes, that is true, that, that bill I introduced, was, held up because of that incident that just happened, with that, kid. And, and L&I has fined that business, for that practice. There were violations there. But this one business does not represent all of CTE programs, and letting these kids go from the classroom to the workplace with proper instruction, proper, mentors and teachers and safety gear and things like that that were lacking on that job site where that kid was. And so those are the things we're working on to make that bill better. And well, there was something else I was going to mention. I can't, it just flew out of my brain. Oh, the running start hours. Yeah, we've got policy staff, and that we have access to when we're working on bills. So that just came up that I don't know why there's a 48-hour work week for running start kids. So we certainly don't want to match that. I was just mentioning that was something that we came up that we saw was very odd. And that's not something that we want to do in this bill. But we were connecting the language to match running start, because it's still the kind of the similar kids are going to community college so they can have take their classes there and have more time to work. So that was why I mentioned that. So
Apologies if I missed something.
no, you do not have to apologize.
I'm curious where each of you stands on the big 3-4 statewide initiatives that are on the ballot this year. The Climate Commitment Act, capital gains, long-term care benefits, natural gas appliances. Stephanie, let's start with you. Where do you stand on those?
So I would like to see all of those repealed. Long-term care, there is not sufficient money there that's gonna take care of, I think, $30,000+. What I am hearing from, my coworkers is they have to pay into it. I have a couple of people that are, about to retire. In fact, was planning a retirement party today for someone, for next month, and he's had to pay into long-term care. He won't have the money into it for 10 years. And so there just needs to be work on it. Not that long-term care, the idea isn't a good idea. It's this that needs some work. And the Republicans have put amendments and alternate bills. I believe that was Barno's bill, looking to change and make that long-term care bill better, where it's portable. So when you go to buy an insurance plan, I mean, you shop for things that are gonna fit your life. You don't get mandated into buying a state-run benefit that, doesn't meet your needs. So that is why I oppose that. Another thing is all the employees were blaming the company. So they're going to HR and saying, why are you taking more money out of my paycheck? So I think communication about it needs to be a little bit better too. So we took some hits on that, just as some upset employees. So having to just educate people on that, on what that was all about. The natural gas ban, I do not support. I didn't support, I voted no on it on the floor when that was introduced in the wee hours of the morning. By a representative that herself said this bill needs a lot more work, and we're gonna send it to the Senate for them to finish the work. Well, it didn't get much better, and it was still passed. I watched the governor on the wings on the Democrat side pluck off Democrats one by one and threaten to take away their chair positions, veto their bills if they didn't vote for it. So that was, as a newbie, that was a little disturbing that that's how we pass bills and make law around here. And I just, I think our climate goals are pretty aggressive. And I think they're to the detriment of the people of the state of Washington. And it's going to cost $40,000 to $50,000 per household to switch to natural gas. And most people can't afford that. I just talked to a
Under the
constituent.
bill, are they required to switch?
Eventually, yes. There's a date for that, a goal to switch. So it's very expensive, talking to constituents. I talked to a gentleman from Battleground. He makes $24 an hour. And the extra cost on gas. So speaking to the Climate Commitment Act, the cost of everything is just gone up. I mean, Deken himself said that we need to have money in the pockets of the people that generates our economy. And I think we need to find some balance. Again, we need balance in these climate commitment goals. I want to clean air and water just as much as the next person, and want to protect our environment. But I think we just need to find a way to balance it and to make these lofty goals and burden the people in the state on just the high rise of everyday products and struggling to get by. This gentleman's like, my $24 an hour just is getting eaten up with, he's trying to support a family, and his dollars just aren't going as far as they once were. So that is why I'm against the Climate Commitment Act. And then what was capital gains? I think that I think what we tax plenty in this state. We are a very heavily taxed state. I don't think we need any more money. 2 years ago, we had a $15 billion surplus, and all we did was grow our spending. I think we have a spending problem in this state. I know I'm a frugal person, so this really just, just to see the things that we spend our money on in this state blow my mind. But I believe that it's a matter of priorities. And I think that we can get everything done that we want to get done by reprioritizing what we do spend money on in the legislature and those decisions that we make.
Now, you talked earlier about the difficulty of school construction.
Yeah.
Particularly for rural or poor areas. How would you replace the money that currently is coming from the capital gains tax?
Well, I think we need to look at completely redoing how we fund education, which to your first question on education, there shouldn't be inequities. Every school district should be able to get the same. So, you know, school district in Bellevue and school district in Battleground, our kids should have equity. And my kids shouldn't go into Prairie High School with orange and gold carpet and cupboards. And then, you know, in Bellevue, kids are going to schools that look like community colleges.
Has the capital gains tax helped even out those inequities? No, think so. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. No, Deken, your take on the initiatives.
Yeah, I guess we could have added that to the differences in candidates. Personally, I'll be voting no on all four initiatives. 2117 would remove a huge chunk of funding for infrastructure projects in the state. There's no guarantee of lower gas prices associated with the repeal of that act. And I think our state's climate commitment goals are aggressive, but I think that when we put the mindset in of transitioning justly through many forms of energy to meet those goals, I think we'll see success. And that includes with natural gas. I will still be voting no on that initiative, but I do see where we need to make sure that there are carve outs for some of our larger industries that are reliant on natural gas for the kind of power and heat needed to produce their products. I know I've heard from paper industries, and there's several others throughout the state who are really reliant on natural gas. But to phase that out, I think makes sense. It's the same way we're trying to phase out our reliance on fossil fuels in general, and that's why we're looking at small modular reactors, we're looking at hydrogen, we're looking at hydro and wind and solar and offshore, and I think that diversified energy portfolio is the only way that Washington will meet those energy goals. I've heard it from my electrician brothers and sisters. We don't have the electric infrastructure to end our reliance on fossil fuels in Washington state as immediately as we hope. And so we have to look at a very diverse approach to ending that and making that transition. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I like having natural gas. I think a lot of people that cook like it. So let's make some tweaks. I'm still gonna support it because I think we have to make those bold steps to move forward. And there's always the opportunity to correct. As far as the capital gains, yeah, I think Washington has one of the most regressive tax structures in the nation. And when we have the wealthy elites not paying their fair share and people like myself and Stephanie and Nicole getting taxed at a higher rate than the millionaires in the King County area, I think we're missing a huge opportunity to fund schools, to fund projects, right? Like fair is fair. And it's not just when it's about school districts receiving equal money, it's about people paying closer to equal amounts as well. And then, sorry, what's the fourth one? I'm blanking on it.
Long-term care.
Long-term care. Yeah. There's definitely, I think, some kinks to be worked out, but I think the intent is good, right? Some of families' largest costs are medical expenses. And when people are putting aside for a rainy day, most of those expenses come later in life. I think we would all agree that if you look, somebody in their 70s is likely to have more medical issues, more death than somebody in their 20s. And so it's a way of, like we do with retiree medical, like our working members pay into the pot for retiree medical. So those retired older members that need more access to it have it when they're not able to put into the pot. It's like you're paying ahead for the service, right? And so I can definitely see the concern of somebody that's near retirement and fears that they're going to put money in that they'll never access. I don't think that that's a win-win for anybody, but we do need to be funding it as a whole so that it's available to everybody when the time comes. I would be surprised if pass or fail, there aren't tweaks to it. And I'd be happy to be a part of that process and see how we can make it work for the people of Washington. But as far as my ballot, you'll see a no on all four of those initiatives.
Thank you. Well, move along then and give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any notable endorsements, and we'll start with Stephanie.
Okay, well, I would be honored to continue serving the people of the 18th district. They entrusted me 2 years ago with this job, and I'm hoping to be rehired. I've still got 2 years is pretty quick, and that's a fast-paced environment and a new job. And so there's a lot to learn. I feel like know what I'm doing now. I won't be a deer in headlights like I was 2 years ago. And I'm looking forward to reintroducing some of the bills that didn't quite get through last year. Last year was short session, so we were looking at a long session. So I have some time to get that work done. I think I am a good representative of the people. I take their concerns and their voices into consideration. I do not think of my point of view. I think I research and seek out. I've done surveys when issues come up in the legislature to get a sense of how people in the 18th district feel about something. I have voted against my caucus for a few things that because the people in the 18th district were supportive of it. So I'm not afraid to go out on a limb and make sure I do my due diligence in representing the people of my district. That's how I was able to get the firefighters union endorsement. And I also have the WACOPS, Washington Council of Police and Sheriff. I work closely with our sheriff's department. I'm working with them now. They're being kind of kicked out of the jail. The jail's being remodeled and they do not have an admin office. Why is our sheriff in downtown Vancouver anyway? So I'm working with Horsh on trying to see if the county can get them a building, and if they can't, or if they need help, then I want to help through the capital budget that I was moved to assistant ranking on last year because of my common sense approach to things and my ability to work with everyone, no matter what letters next to your name. I think if you ask anybody up there, I get along with everyone. I don't have any enemies. At the end of the day, we're all people doing a job up there, and we're kind of help each other along because it's a pretty stressful environment when you're living away from home for 4 months at a time. But just, to wrap up, I just really appreciate the opportunity of being here. And I could tell you, I never in a million years thought I would be running 2 years ago state rep. I mean, I wasn't stay-at-home mom for 8 years and just part of the community and volunteered. And I loved being on the school board, but I never thought I would be doing this. But it is an honor and I love it. And to have your name on the desk on the House floor is amazing. And I appreciate every second of it. So thank you so much for having us and thank you for the questions.
Hey, thank you, Deken.
Yeah, I am excited for this opportunity because I know that when in Olympia, I can hit the ground running, no excuses, right? Like we can start looking at writing up a simple majority for bonds and levies legislation. We can look at lowering the drinking limit to 0.05, which will in turn hopefully change driver behavior and lower roadside fatalities and road work fatalities. We can look at introducing day one, a bill that requires education pieces for new drivers for how to drive through work zones. So again, we're protecting the lives of people in Washington State who are just trying to provide for their families. We can continue to protect women's healthcare freedoms in Washington State. It's easy to say it and like, oh, it's fine, it's Washington, that'll never happen. But just last year, there were laws that were, or legislation that was presented in various forms that would reduce those rights and peel back abortion rights in Washington State. And so that's not enough. You have to be dedicated. I'm 100% pro-life, or excuse me, pro-choice. It's a lot of notes. It's a lot of talking. I'm excited at the opportunity to do good things for the people of Washington State. My experience as Assistant Political and Legislative Director and advocating for my union lets me know that, yes, there will be a little bit of a learning curve. I think that's inevitable, and I think it's unfair to say that it's not. But 2 years seems like a long time, and I'm ready to hit the ground running and start doing meaningful things for the people of Washington that are counting on their representatives. And I think with a majority in the House, I will have an easier go of getting things passed and getting things taken care of. And so to work with Speaker Jenkins and the majority, I think we'll be able to do good for the people of the 18th and in Washington State in general. And I humbly ask for the vote of the people in the 18th. And I appreciate this board and their time today. And I appreciate my opponent in a lot of ways. I think that I hope that she feels the same way, but I feel like her and I have ran a very professional campaign based on issues, and there's not a lot of nonsense. And I know I appreciate that, and I hope you do as well. And I hope it continues for the next 4 weeks. And I'm excited to see what November 5th holds, but we're confident that we've done the work and made the calls and knocked on the doors, and we'll find our way to Olympia next year. So I appreciate the time, and thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks to both of you.